Yeah, I grew up in Memphis, Tennessee, and just love to cook. Love barbecue. Um, I just love entertaining. I love cooking and all that kind of good stuff. And this just so happened, the origin of this product, just as a quick history, um, I was named after one of my great aunts, Minnie Beasely. She was a real person, and she lived with us when we were growing up. And my mom is a fabulous cook, homemaker. You know, I grew up in the 70s, late 60s, 70s. And so she'd make all this stuff at Christmas, pecan balls, cheese straws, you name it. She made it, lemon squares. She'd spend 2 or 3 days, and then she made these little things she called almond lace. She called them almond lace wafers, and it was my great aunt's recipe. So I had this thing, and over the years, um, after I moved out of the house, went to college, and all that kind of stuff, and I started making them every Christmas, just to give to friends, because I love doing it. I just, make a whole bunch, spend all day making them, put them in Tupperware, hand them out, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't necessarily plan on, I don't know if that's, going into the cookie business. My sort of driving force, I was single for a pretty long time, finally moved back to Memphis, and I've been involved with youth work and camping, and I was actually out here in Colorado for 4 or 5 years in the early 90s, working for a big camp, producing, making food. I was always waited tables and all that kind of stuff, so I was always connected somewhat in the food business. And I just wanted to start my own business. We moved out here. We were in Memphis. I got married. I was working for an organization in Memphis. My wife was teaching art. She had gone to DU, and she'd spent a lot of time, obviously, out here in Colorado. We didn't have kids at the time, and so we just said we want to move to Denver. We don't want to be in Memphis anymore. So we literally just packed up and moved. We didn't have jobs, didn't have anything. And we had a little bit of savings, so we got a rental house over by DU and Observatory Park, actually. And then she started looking for a teaching job. And then I just, started. I was going to do some contracting stuff. And that was in November that year, and I made my annual, December, made my annual batch of cookies to give to friends. And I'd thought about it over the years. I just never acted on it because I knew I could sell them. And we were actually we were temporarily working for UPS. They'll hire a bunch of driver assistants during the holidays just because we didn't have jobs. And we still, we had a little bit of savings that we were living on. And so my route was over off of 3rd and Holly, and there's this little store over there. And let me back up. It's you're talking about how you want to do it or this, that, and the other. And I imagine with inventing, it's probably the same thing. Everybody's story is almost exactly the same. It's just like a different widget or, especially in mine, I always hear these same stories. Well, we cashed in our 401k and we found this, and then we got a kitchen, and then we did this, and it was just the same sort of mess. So my story is really not much different than any of that. So I had made my cookies, and I'd gotten to know the owner of this little gift shop and this little place called It's called a cheese company. They make sandwiches and stuff like that, and they always have these little things out for sale. And so I brought my cookies in there one day. I'm in my little brown uniform with UPS, and I asked the proprietor, I asked her and her manager, I said, could I sell these? And she says, you're damn right you can sell those. And they were just right in the Tupperware, And so anyway, so that's kind of how, but my point I wanted to make was that my passion is to be an entrepreneur. And my passion is to be, and I know it sounds really selfish, but there's just something that I was born with that I can't work for anybody else. I just can't. And, maybe I will have to, I might have to, if this doesn't work, if the bill collectors keep coming and that kind of thing. But, I'll get to that part of it here in a minute. But, so, again, it was just this, I had to make something happen. I had to create something, and it was kind of right there in front of me. And I said, this is as good a time as any. Let's just do it. And I didn't know anything about, of course, I'm very familiar with kitchens and all that kind of stuff. But so I came home and talked to my wife about it, and she had gotten an offer from a school. So she was going to have a little full-time job here teaching art at a charter school up north. And so that was one of the things I wanted to, a little point, and I'll look at my cheat sheet here. So how did we do it? Well, a lot of y'all probably heard this particular saying, but it really was my mantra, and I need to get back to it. I've gotten away from it some, but back in the early 3 or 4 years, was do the next indicated thing. Has anybody heard that before? No? Well, write that down, because you just do the next indicated thing. And I guess you would be successful doing anything in life if you always did that, right? So what's the next indicated thing? Well, I've got little ones. I've got a 2-year-old. Well, he's got a stinky diaper. Well, the next indicated thing is for me to go change that diaper. Don't put it off. Do not procrastinate. And I'm the biggest procrastinator in the world. So with that, you can read all these books, and the government has all this stuff out there too, and the business license, and you guys, from what I hear and would assume, are y'all real into the patents and the trademarks and infringement and all that kind of stuff. So obviously there's a process, and whatever that process is in your world, I would highly recommend that you just do the next indicated thing. And if you do enough of the next indicated things, it's kind of like putting a little quarter in a jar, then all of a sudden you have a cookie company. I didn't know, so what did I need? I needed, well, first of all, I needed to find out if people would actually buy these things. So I made up, before that, I needed a package. I need labeling, and I need some sort of package, and I don't have any money. And so these things are weird. They're not really a cookie, and they don't fit into anything real well, and they break if you look at them. So I had all these little issues that we solved over just using that would be another idea, and I don't know how it fits into what some of you guys are doing, but using stock things that are already out there as part of maybe your invention, or definitely as part of your packaging. There's no sense in and we've never done this because I've never had the money, but if I had the money, I could go get a firm to design a box or a package or this, that, and the other, and I've just never had the money to do it. So we went out and we found stuff that we would make work. My cookies just happened to fit in that stock tin right there, and that's not actually how they're packaged. They're packaged in these bags, and we put bubble wrap around them. So we found out that if we keep them clustered and we put bubble wrap around them, that they travel. That's the best way we've figured out. It was just all trial and error, because they do. Now, if they're frozen, they don't break as easily. And so that gives us other options down the road as well as far as distribution. So that would be another idea to convey, would be, as I was doing the next indicated thing, I needed a package. I needed something that looked good, but so what did look good? Well, I found a half-pound coffee bag with a twist tie. Looks pretty good. Of course, everybody thinks my cookies are coffee, but so anyway, I made up 12 bags or 20 bags in my kitchen at home. I didn't have a kitchen. I have a friend that was a graphics design guy, and he's done everything for me. That'd be another one too. If you can get it for free, free's not always free, but sometimes it's pretty close. So you sound like you might be able to give some of those services. I have a buddy who designed, I had to pay it down, but this is my wedding. This was our wedding china that had been in a box for 8 years. We'd never used it. And he took this picture, and he just did that for me, and he's a good friend. I've known him for 30 years, and so that's been our logo. And we got that for free. So those kind of things. I mean, and those not really cutting corners, but I mean, those just survival. Those things you got to do to survive. I mean, unless, which might be the best advice ever, if you got the greatest thing since sliced bread and you can somehow convince, someone with just huge amounts of money that you do, then maybe that'd be another option, is just go from the get-go and just get a bucket load of money. And then you can move through and do it, And I would actually probably go, maybe not a bucket load of money, but I might do it all differently when it's all said and done. And I think a lot of people would probably tell you that too. But, so anyway, I took 12 bags, and this goes to, how do you get your thing out there? How do you get your widget out there? I mean, I don't know, again, a lift, I don't know. I just know you got to get face to face, and you got to do the legwork because no one else is going to do it for you. And so I made 12 bags of cookies. I took them around to 12 different shops here in Denver. I didn't know what else to do. Didn't even have a kitchen. I just cold called. And obviously I used a little bit of common sense. You don't want to cold call a coffee shop at 8 o'clock in the morning, or a little fancy cheese company. Probably between 12 and 1 wouldn't be a good time to do that. So, 3 o'clock Monday afternoon, probably not 3 o'clock Friday afternoon. Those type things. I don't know if that, you just sort of assess. And so I just walked in 12 different shops over a 2 or 3 day period, introduced myself, didn't really try not to oversell, but I was just kind of like, look, I got these things. My mother taught me how to make them, and they're phenomenal. Would you please just taste them? Could you think you could sell them? Sure. I mean, who's going to not take free cookies? So I, again, had a pretty easy entry, into that world. But I would imagine that if you have an invention or something that you find, obviously, I'm talking about who's your market, who's your target market. Well, in the beginning, we felt like little stores would be, coffee shops. I went to every coffee shop in Denver back whenever. So, and then another little deal is just don't ever assume and this is really hard because I'm going to give you the example. Of all the 12, the one guy, and I got to know him afterwards, that after I walked out of that store, I thought, this guy's not going to call me back. I mean, this guy had an attitude. He was kind of like, yeah, whatever. He's kind of a little pompous fella. And I'm not going to mention where the shop was, but he ends up being a great guy. His first person called me back. First person called me back. 2 days, a day after I dropped the cookies off. And so that's really blew my perspective away in terms of you just never know, who's going to like your stuff, and people are going to surprise you. So he goes, yeah, when can I get my first order? Well, I didn't have anything. I said, well, you got to give me a few weeks. I was actually working with a contractor talking about ladders. I was downstairs refinishing a basement, and I was doing all the trim work and the painting and stuff. And this guy calls me on the phone, and I'm like, all right, So, and I didn't know how much case price or anything like that, or really how much. So I said, give me a month, and I'll get back with you. So next indicated thing was to find a commercial kitchen, and I had a friend that was working on something along those lines, which I thought just crossing over with some of the stuff you guys might be doing, and y'all probably know all this kind of stuff, but at one time the city sponsored a big commercial kitchen up at 30th and Arapahoe called the Denver Enterprise Center, and we were there. And they also did other businesses as well. It was an incubator type situation. I don't know of there are several commercial kitchens in Denver. They're not quite necessarily incubators. They're just more commissaries, although I'd imagine the people that run them, if you needed some sort of guidance, they could probably help you in that area. the Denver Enterprise Center never really panned out. I don't think it ever really panned out like they wanted it to. They wanted to offer all sorts of services from marketing to, it was never real. An incubator means you come in here for maybe 2 years, and then you're not a baby anymore. Well, there were companies that hung out around there for 10 years and just took advantage of the cheap rent. So I've got to believe that there are, and y'all may have had somebody come speak on this, or they're not entrepreneur or inventor incubators. I got to know that. I think there's one I thought I read about one really cool one in Boulder, but I didn't do any research. But I got to believe that that's an option out there for you guys. There's got to be something. I know a friend of mine was doing this little, he came up with a little PDF gizmo, and they were going to be the next greatest thing. But they were working out of an incubator in Memphis, where they were paying a little bit less rent, and then they had the services, like they shared, printers and phones and whatnot. So that's something to look into. As far as, if you're making a widget and you got to mass produce something, or if it's, I don't know, obviously you got to make something somewhere. And so whether you're making it, I can't make my cookies in my garage, but an inventor might very well be able to make, what they're going to sell in their garage, I would imagine. And it sounds to me like, tell me your name. Yes, sir. Don. It sounds to me like Don's gone through obviously all those steps with your invention and having it produced and whatnot, or whether you produce it yourself or somebody fabricates it and the whole 9 yards. So on that note, I would say, like in the food industry, I kind of have this unique deal that's really not a cookie, but we call it a cookie because nobody really knows what it is. And we still are faced with the marketing of this. There's only one other product that's even close to this. They're called Lacey's. You can find them at Whole Foods. They're round. They're a Florentine. They're sandwiched with the chocolate. And so people have seen those type products before, whether it be like in a French bakery or something like that. But no one's really seen a tweel. Now, we believe this is probably European, because I've met a lot of Europeans who tell me that that's probably where it's from. So I got this thing. It's not really a cookie. It's called a tweel, but nobody knows what a tweel is. So how do we market this? And we had it in a little coffee bag in Whole Foods, and no one was buying them. So we realized that we needed to be in a clear, see-through. The Whole Foods really likes that. Well, all the grocery stores like it now. They want it to look homemade, and so people can see it. So now our cookies, you'll find our cookies in Whole Foods in a plastic tray, and they're in seven little sticks, and they're gluten-free. The ones at Whole Foods are gluten-free. So I found a kitchen, and I made all these things by myself. I had to work from midnight to 4 in the morning because that was the cheapest time, and was the only time I could get in the kitchen, and I didn't have any employees. And literally, I made how many cookies did I make? I made like 400 cookies in an 8-hour shift by myself. I was cooking them, and then you got to bring them out here, and then you got to roll them, and if they get too hard, they mess up. And so again, and this is just coming off the top of my head, and I remember thinking this, and this is another one that I probably need to get back to, is that nobody's going to do it for you. Not unless you pay them a lot of money, but no one's going to do it as good as you're going to do it. Now, at some point, you got to let that go, though. Because I can't sit there and roll cookies all day, and the ladies that work for me actually do make them better than I was making them. But that's not the point. There's just remember that, especially early on, you're going to have to make it happen. You're the one that's going to have to go and do that next thing that needs to happen for your business to grow. Because like I said, no one else is. No one's going to have the passion. No one's going to have the energy. No one else is going to do it for you. At least that's my experience. So, I don't bore you there. We found a kitchen, and then I just went out and, got a website. Spent way too much money on my first website, which I wish I could have done over again. But there are, since then, that's been 10 years ago, there's tons of free shopping carts out there, SEO and all that kind of stuff. I mean, SEO is totally a four-letter word. No offense. But I don't want to get into all that, the marketing end of everything. But we just pretty much direct marketed and got our cookies. We're successful when people taste our cookies. Pretty simple. So where do you get people to taste cookies? We thought we were going to grow and be like in every Whole Foods in the world and every King Soopers in the world, and all, and reality set in on that. And I don't know that that's the model I want to continue with anyway. But you know, where do we get people? So I drove around all the coffee shops. I drove around all the little small gift shops, and then we just started getting orders. They taste cookies. They love the cookies. And then, so I would just hand deliver. I'd make, you know, these bags of cookies at my little kitchen. And before that, I mean, I went downtown. I got my business license and all this, you know, this rigmarole. And I hired a lawyer to incorporate me. Cost me $1,000, and I found out a year later I could have done it myself for about $50. So that was a $1,000 mistake. Don't hire. I mean, unless you want to give. I mean, I don't know. You can incorporate, go online, and with a credit card and $50, you're incorporated. So I don't want to necessarily speak to all that, but so I've obviously made tons of mistakes. My first 10, I actually tried to ship them with the cookies loose like that, and I had 300 orders. I had 300 tins going out to different people for Christmas. And I shipped them all out with the gift cards and took everybody's money, and I started getting phone calls from the recipients telling me that there was a box of crumbs and a box of crumbs and a box of crumbs. And I was like, oh, gosh. So I scrambled, and that's when we figured out the bubble wrap. I resent all 300. Cost me whatever it cost me, because it didn't matter. I mean, it was unsatisfied. I wrote a letter to every customer, every person that received the cookies, like Merry Christmas from Jane Doe, and then I wrote a letter to Jane Doe apologizing and telling them that I resent it, whatever. And it was a great learning experience. I didn't beat myself up too bad. It did cost me some extra money. I had this sweet old man and lawyer. This is the good lawyer story. He had ordered about 15 of these things, and they were $20 plus shipping, so he'd spent $200-300 with me. He sent me a $100 check and a letter and said, I see what happened here, and I know you're just getting started. I know you lost a lot of money on this deal. I appreciate your good business practices. You know, here's $100. And he still does business with me, you know, to this day. So at any rate, you know, correcting your mistakes and customer service, obviously, you know, backing up your product. Our cookies will go bad if they sit in the counter for too long and in like the cupboard, and so it doesn't happen a lot, but we always back that up. If someone calls and says, "Oh, my cookies are bad," you know, we'll send them some more. So that was kind of that was early on, and again, it's still nothing. It still really doesn't change, you know. Getting folks to taste our product is our best marketing strategy at this point, and we're still doing that. So I ran into Roger here, who was familiar with our product from Whole Foods, and we tried the airport last year, and we lost a whole bunch of money because we couldn't get people to stop. So where do you find, you know, where do you? Let me back up. If you want to take a product nationwide, at least from our experience, from the people that I've seen that have done it and that have been successful and what I've read, if you want to take something like a food product and try to go, maybe not nationwide, but even half the country, or, I mean, we're talking, you know, 5,000 grocery stores or something like that, you better go get about $5 million. I'm just telling you. If that's the strategy, you know, you want to take. I mean, think about it. You go into 100 Whole Foods in California, and they want you to do a tasting at least once a month, and you can't go over there and do all those tastings. So the marketing dollars alone, you got to be able to withstand probably 12 to 18 months of just breaking even. and plus your distribution and all this other kind of stuff. But you know, if I were to go into 100 Whole Foods tomorrow in California and they never heard about this product, I better have about a $25,000 a month marketing budget to pay somebody to stand there and give away free cookies, or the product's never going to last. You know, so I don't know if that's part of y'all. I don't know what it would take. I mean, we live in such a crazy age. I mean, you can start an internet business, you can start a business out of your house, you can, but you know, obviously finding who your audience is and where do you get somebody interested in a solar lift that can lift 400 pounds or weighs 400 pounds but can lift whatever. I mean, I don't know because I'm not in that world, but I don't think you're going to be dragging that thing to a farmer's market trying to sell one of them on a Saturday morning. But if you have, maybe it's a gadget, or I was thinking about, you know, what are the gadgets that have been popular that you guys are probably familiar with? And I don't like, I think a guy in Boulder came up with this little thing that you stick on the back of your iPhone that kind of accordions out. Y'all know what I'm talking about? Anyway, my nephew's got one. And I want to say they did a Kickstarter campaign, and they were very successful. It's just this little suction cup thing that sticks onto your back of your iPhone, and it's flush when you shut it, and then it just helps you hold your iPhone better. I don't know. I want to say that guy did Kickstarter, got a bunch of money. But, you know, a guy like that could take that if he had it mass-produced, or a gal. I could see that possibly working at a farmer's market for a while, if that's the route you wanted to go. A book, obviously jellies and jams and all that kind of stuff. So we did that route. We went farmers markets and shows, these holiday shows. And so we've built up this business clientele, and we weren't really thinking about going into Whole Foods or anything like that. And then everybody always asks me, how did I get into Whole Foods? And I kind of get a little big-headed because I answered the phone. The buyer from Whole Foods, I mean, this doesn't happen. The buyer from Whole Foods called. She goes, Harmon, I'm eating a bag of your gluten-free cookies. I just about ate the whole bag. I want to put your gluten-free cookies in all the Whole Foods in the Rocky Mountain region. So that's how I got into Whole Foods. Now that, you know, easy. That was easy. So a lot of things have come easy because the product is so good. And then but on that note, I wanted to, and I'm not a business person, and so this is very hard for me to grasp. Although I'm a math major, I've actually had a few ideas for inventions. I actually did a quirky thing a couple years ago, and it didn't go anywhere. Kind of made me mad. A buddy of mine told me this once. He said, a product is not a business. I'm still trying to I still don't quite understand. I mean, I know what it means, but just because I've got the best cookie in the world, or you've got the best ladder safety device ever invented, or the best lift, and you know there's a market for it, and and on that note, another guy in the food industry told me once, he said, if you take your product to market and someone buys it and then they call you back to reorder, then you have a business. Okay? Right? So those type things, we have repeat customers. We won Best Cookie at the largest gourmet show in the world, New York City. That cost me a lot of money, and I was going to mention that too. I got sucked into doing these trade shows right in about the third year we were in business, and if I could do it all over again, I would have never gone. Would have never gone. Those things, they're great if you got the budget for it, you know. We got to know the Jelly Belly people and all these good Jared Deli's chocolate and, you know, all the big wigs. They spend all this money, and I'm over there staying in New Jersey and taking a cab over here, and the booth is $10,000, and the whole week was $10,000, and that's cheap. That's on the cheap. You know, you're bringing all your stuff in and all this kind of. So, I don't know how that. Just from my experience, now there may be a show that in your little world that you really need to go to because that's really the only place to get the exposure. I don't know, but that may or may not be the case. I'm just telling you, I spent $150,000 over about 4 years going to these trade shows. and I got a gold statue. And I got Jacques Pepin shook my hand and said, "You got the best cookie this year," and that's about all I ever got out of it. And maybe we did it wrong. I don't know, but it just didn't work for us. So, and I've heard other people say that too. There are other smaller markets. There's like a Dallas Market Center for our product, and there's one in Atlanta that we do, to meet the wholesale accounts. But so back to what I said. A product is not a business. And again, I understand that, but I'm not a cross my T, dot my I kind of guy. I'm a people person and a seller. And so my advice to you would, obviously it's got to make sense on paper. It's not rocket science. Well, it might be in this crowd. But, everything's got a cost, and can you sell it, and is there a profit in there, and, what's the shipping and your margins, and we just learned from industry people of what typical bakery product margins are, and there may be difference. I mean, gosh, the markup and margin are two different things, and I won't get into all that kind of stuff. But I mean, just think about it. I mean, women's clothing. I mean, those folks are buying stuff for $5 and they're selling it for $50, right? Because at the end of the year, they're giving it all to TJ Maxx because they done made so much on the other stuff. So I would imagine that part of it and the viability of it and the business plan and where all that kind of stuff that you're going to get bombarded with. If I hear business plan one more time, I'm going to scream. But obviously, if you're going to try to attract investors, you have to have obviously a killer business plan, and that's a whole nother topic of discussion. I've written several, and most of them have been horrible. But there are also other places too that I did a course at the Chamber of Commerce Development Center, Small Business Development Center downtown, which was really neat. And there's obviously those resources as well. I'm sorry, I'm starting to kind of ramble here, but so we just started selling and went to farmers markets, and then we just learned. And but I've been successful in that we have repeat customers, and Whole Foods called, and we're in Whole Foods, and it looks great. I'm not taking anything away from that, but I haven't been financially successful yet, and it's been a long, long road. And I think part of that has to do with my style, and part of it has to do with never being properly funded. And I mean, that is textbook. I've never taken a business class, but what's the reason why all businesses or all the failed businesses fail? Or the number one reason is capital. So I'm sitting here with a marketing issue, a capital issue, because I know my tipping point. That's a great book, by the way, if you hadn't read it. I don't even know who it's by, but if I had all the money to get this out to where people could taste them, it's all about marketing. So we've gotten to that point. We know how to manufacture them. We know our margins. We have great margins when we sell direct. Our internet business does pretty well. We have repeat customers. We have thousands of repeat customers, but we need hundreds of thousands of repeat customers. So that's kind of where we are in our business path. And so struggling big time still financially, but I have this. And again, it goes back to, Harmon, you got a great product, but that's not a business. So trying to figure out how do I capitalize that, how do I get more investors, or start making the right decisions, And then, I mean, some of it's just the school of hard knocks, and it's learning, like going to all those trade shows and things like that. But so that's where we are. So taking that for what that's worth, I would really encourage you. Again, you're the only one that's going to do it at this stage. Do the next indicated thing. Figure out the money, which I never did properly. I'll admit to you. And I wrote, you've heard Families, Fools, and Friends. Anybody ever heard that? well, I haven't lost any friends yet, but there were definitely family fools and friends in my past, which is no different, And then how do you structure that legally? And obviously you got the legalese here, this, that, and the other. And I know the other thing too that I struggled with as a sort of an entrepreneur's mind is, you always hear about these the folks that get into the market, the second movers and the third movers into the market with a particular product end up knocking the first guy out. And again, maybe I've just been lucky because these things are so damn hard to make that I don't know that anybody would really want to copy it. They might. I got it trademarked. But you know what? The reality was, I was all scared. When I meet with these guys, do I need to get them to sign a non-compete and this, that, and the other? And, of course, we're dealing with two different things here. Mine are just cookies. But I had to get out there. I had to put it out there. But the minute you put it out there, I don't have any kind of patent on these things. And so, if somebody wanted to, they're just going to go buy my cookies and eat them and duplicate them. You can't do anything about it. So you just got to kind of get out there and be the best you can be on that note. Now, that may be totally different in your world, which I suspect that it probably is. I don't know. But if you've got something that's patented, then you probably have a lot more protection. But I wasn't really looking to, you don't really patent I trademarked Minnie Beasley's, and then if you use it long enough, you're going to be covered anyway. There was one other thing. How are we looking on time here? Rocky Mountain. Oh, I was going to mention a couple of folks that helped me out. Well, one particular group that helped me out in the Rocky Mountain Microfinance. Y'all familiar with those guys? They just moved. I got an email from them the other day. I'm not exactly sure. They've been up in the North Denver area. And they put micro loans together. They're really nice people. I hadn't talked to them in a long time, but they helped me out years ago. And they're still in business. And then Rocky Mountain Angels. There's a group called Rocky Mountain Angels. I don't know anything about them. I just was doing some research on angel investors, and I want to say they have a group that meets once a quarter. Anybody know anything about Rocky Mountain Angels? Evidently, it's a bunch of men and women who get together maybe twice, 3 times a year and hear pitches. So, you know how that goes. You go in and, I've never done anything like that. So, obviously those words have just been tossed around the last 10 years, angel investors, and now it's crowdsourcing. Everybody knows about crowdsourcing. Do I even need to Kickstarter? I swear this guy in Boulder did Kickstarter, and he was one of their big success stories. And the other one I remember, because we tried a Kickstarter campaign, and it didn't work. But there was somebody was making a watch or something, a little thing out of Chicago, and it was going to hold an iPad or what is the little small one? The iPod or whatever. They were like going to wanted to raise like $100,000. They raised like $1 million and something in like a month or something. And I don't know if y'all are familiar with how that's really just a pre-order scenario. They had it in, so they know they need 50,000 widgets, and so they just got the money, but then they're going to turn back around and give those away. So they're really right back to where, but that gets that initial Kickstarter. So if you're not, I was just going to mention all those because I'm sure y'all are familiar with that. And I don't know, the other one that came to mind, South by Southwest. Does everybody know about South by Southwest Festival in Austin? It may or may not fit into your application. Are you familiar? It's sort of a catch-all, but a lot of technical stuff goes on down there. And then I want to say Boulder has a big tech and adventure or something week as well. But I've Googled, I've tried everything. Tried to send Oprah cookies, sent Gayle King cookies. Everybody tells me I need to get on Shark Tank, and I tell them no, I don't. That's kind of a, ridiculous thing. I've sent who else I sent cookies to? We were on Rachel Ray. She put a snack of the day, and I sent her 200 bags of cookies, and she got a little morning show, I guess, and she does like a little thing. And so she said, Minnie Beasley's Cookies from Denver, Colorado. Let's break for a commercial. You know, and I didn't get a single order from that. So, but we were on there twice. We did it again just for the fun of it. So, anyway, and obviously when you hear this, if you ever, and again, I'll be the first to admit, I wish I'd done things differently. But here's the last thing I'm going to tell you, and you know this. At least you got to know it. And again, I haven't really been successful yet financially, but I love what I'm doing. I love being my own boss. Of course, my wife is my boss, but my kids now are my boss. I've got 4 little ones. I'm an old dad. But perseverance, whatever that means, and you hear it, you know, you go to all these entrepreneurs or these people that have made it big, and everybody, you know, what's the one thing? And, you know, it was really probably a whole lot of money, but definitely perseverance. And I'm not giving up. I mean, there's no way. I don't know how. I don't know where the next little bit of investment money is going to come through. I don't even know how this mall thing is going to work, to be honest with you. We crashed and burned at the airport. And I don't know if I was stupid to do it again, but at least we're getting people to taste the cookies instead of just, and in the past we were just tasting our cookies on the weekends in the summer at farmers markets and then, you know, at shows and these holiday shows. And so we thought that was going to do it, you know, because we got the best cookie ever. Well, it didn't do it. So we got to get people tasting those things every single day of the year. So that's my plan moving forward. And so with your little whatever it is, I mean, you got to get hardware stores or buyers or whoever to see your product. As you know, it may be a show is the best way to do that. I don't know. Again, everything's got its differences. I don't know that I would ever go back to a big trade show. It just doesn't do it. Of course, our focus now is we would like to be more of an Engstrom's. If you're familiar with the Engstrom's toffee, or we'd like to be more. Oh, and that was another thing. Obviously, you got to decide what do you want. You know, and especially in this day and age of VC and all this kind of stuff, and you know, what's your exit strategy? And I'm like, well, I just kind of want to have this nice cookie company, and my kids can run it if they want to, and so we don't really have an exit strategy. But you might, you know, it might be a situation where you see, because I was thinking about that watch thing that guy raised $1 million on. Well, now Apple's got their own watch, so who wants his little product anymore? I mean, they might be just, I don't know if they're still in business. I mean, you've seen stuff like this come and go, just like that. So is your product, is it long-term? You're going to get reorders? Are they going to use it forever? I would imagine something to do with ladders and safeties. Do you use that forever? Or is it kind of a get in, get out kind of thing? You know, I don't know. Because especially if it's in technology, right? I mean, or anything to do with gadgets, and it's kind of funny, we're across from Brookstone in the mall, so, you know, all the little gadgets and stuff like that. But, so I would just, you know, what are you in it for would be another one, because people used to ask me that all the time. And again, we're not trying to be in every grocery store in the country. We're trying to be, because I make a lot more money when I sell a box of those cookies online. My margins are great. They're not so great the further out they get, and you know. So we're keeping our small wholesale accounts. We're keeping Whole Foods, and we're keeping King Soopers locally, because that's it. And then we're trying to grow our corporate and grow our hot. We're always going to be heavy fourth quarter. But again, getting people to taste them every day and to grow our direct sales via the internet. So that, and then to be a nice little family. I don't know. Don't want to put a dollar sign on it, but I bet Engstrom's does $10 million a year. They're a big old plant over in Grand Junction. I don't know if y'all know what I'm talking about. They're a toffee company. They don't wholesale. They do a lot of their business is corporate gifts. So I've never met the guy. I hear he's really nice. I probably need to try to, and that'd be another one too. Obviously, people love to give out information, and I bet if I call that guy, he said, "Sure, come on over." And he'd probably sit down and have a good conversation with me. But I would like to have that. I'd like Minnie Beasley's to be just this killer, solid, you know, I've gotten to know a guy who does this in Texas, Greenberg Smoked Turkeys. He's mentored me, and that would be another thing, just off the top of my head, a mentor. This guy, same kind of business, just a different widget. He smokes turkeys, and all of his business comes in about 2 weeks. He sells $10 million worth of turkeys in about, not 2 weeks, I'm sorry, 2 months. Been doing it. It was his daddy's business. They've been doing it. If you'd ever had a Greenberg smoked turkey, he was on Oprah twice. And so he's kind of been my mentor. I have lunch with him every year, and we talk on the phone 3 or 4 times a year. So, is that enough? Questions?
Yeah, we'll take a 10-minute.
I didn't go too long, did I? Well, yeah, I don't want to take up y'all's entrepreneur time either. So I don't know what else I could say.
Come back after 10 minutes and do the question and answer.
Okay, all right, cool.
So, food and drinks over here and the cookies.
Yeah, cookies.